All right, so we'll load up our data, right? And now let's say we just want to break down our data by one product, okay? So, or by one of these features. You can imagine, so when I say features, I basically mean columns. There's also, when you think about the columns in your data set, it's broken down into features and target, generally just one target. And right, features are the inputs, or they are kind of like the factors that lead to a characteristic we're trying to predict. So, for example, if the target is revenue, right, like how much is spent. Now, what the features may be in predicting how much is spent, let's say per customer, might be the customer location, or the age, or whatever, some sort of their interests or their profession, something like that, right? These are all the inputs as to what we are trying to predict. So anyway, we can break down, let's say we're just looking at this one input as to the product, okay? And we want to see how does total revenue break down by product, okay? So the way we can do this, I think, is just with a group by. So do df dot group by the product, and then we can do dot sum. And remember, this is going to return to us a data frame. Okay, so we're going to have to change this. So we have all we really care about here now, I think, is the price each. So let's just select that. If we want, we could even select it up top here. Okay, so now this is the breakdown by each product. So we group by the product. We just select the price each column, and then we do the sum. Okay, and then I'll probably do something like sort values, ascending equals false. Okay, so we can see, right? I've obviously done this before. MacBook Pros dominate our sales, followed by iPhone, etc. So already, this is valuable because like we're breaking it down. We're able to see, which product is dominating the sales. The next step is just to calculate the percentage. So if this is doing, total, what really oftentimes is even more useful than that is like percentage of revenue. So let's just do that. It's not so hard. So we can take these top products, and basically we can just divide it by the sum, right? Top products. If this is a series, right, you can do top products dot sum, right? And now we can just divide each one of these by the sum. And now look, we have percentage, right? So this is, the individual divided by overall. Individual revenue divided by overall revenue will give us the percentage of revenue. All right? So this is just percent revenue per product. And then from here, the next thing that we can do, which is useful, is just the cumulative. Okay? So basically the running total. In SQL, this would be a window function to get the running total. But here, what you can do is take these, is essentially do percent revenue dot cumulative sum. Right, so now you can see, whereas originally this was 23%, 13%, it started at 23% and then moved to 37%, moved to 49, 59. So why is something like this useful? Because now we can just kind of select, okay, where is this, total less than, 0.80%, and that will give us right, the top 7 products that cover 80% of our revenue, right? So this is pretty useful. Like I said, these types of problems I've seen students get all the time, and unfortunately they are very nebulous, and they're just like, just break down this data set, and not much more instructions than that. So being able to kind of identify, hey, this is really how our data breaks down very quickly, right, and do something like that can really direct you and say, hey, we don't have to worry, like I said, if we have 20 products and they all break down evenly, that's not very useful. You should look at other dimensions. But here, they obviously don't. So then from there, basically just take this and turn it into a function. So take the data frame, group by a column, specify what you are aggregating, right? We're adding this up, and we're going to choose the target. By that I mean like the revenue, right? Select the revenue or whatever that is, sort the values from highest to lowest, right? And then here, kind of by default, this just sums them, but this calculates the percentage, and then this calculates the running percentage, right? So if we look at this and use this build group by function, actually you can see I did it here. We take the data frame, we say let's break it down by city, and the target is again our price each. And now the aggregate is sum, and we can just I don't know, give it some sort of name. So here this quickly breaks down, and you can see these are our top cities. See, these are the ones to focus on. These top 5 account for, or 6 account for 80% of your revenue, right? So you can do this with really any column. And the next step is just to loop through a list of columns, calling build group by each time. So that's what this does, is we specify various columns. You can pass through multiple columns here, and all that will happen is we'll go through each of these columns, build a group by, and then we just turn this into a dictionary. So you can see the way this works is if we specify the target as price each, this will just say, okay, for every column here, call this build a group by function, which is going to group by all the items in the column, add them up per item, and also give us the percentages and running totals. And it breaks, I need to define columns, and what it returns to us is a dictionary. So if you look at results.keys, this returns to us everything we're grouping by. And now if you want to look at any of these individually, right, you kind of have it. Okay, so this is by product. We can look at how our data breaks down by month, right, if we want to focus on a certain time period, etc. All right. And then the last thing is essentially this print our data frame. So you can take any one of these data frames and pass it into this thing. And just to explain to you what this does, this uses matplotlib to create a scatter plot. And if you can notice that it's grouped like the category, each of the items are specified here. If you look at product, right, the product, this is really the index right here, okay? So what we want to do is we want to select the index across one axis, maybe the x-axis, and the output, right, along the y-axis, okay? And then we just plot it. So this print group by prints one of the data frames. And now, you can just call that build group by function and call the and then call the print group by, and it will display it for you. Okay. And then ultimately, what you'll do is just pass through a number of columns: product, city, month, hour, year, right? And then specify, okay, I want to see, the breakdown on our product, how much revenue each product makes, each city makes, each month, each hour, each address, which is probably a proxy for a customer, and call build and print. And now we quickly get a breakdown across these various dimensions. So this is pretty useful, right? If basically the steps are going to be take our data set, coerce the data, right, by turning things into numbers that should be numbers but aren't. Explore the data by selecting, right, select the subset of the data that appears representative, and then call this function, right? So you maybe don't print out every single column at once, but just call df.columns, and then select a few that are interesting for the first round, and then call this function. And now we can start to see, okay, MacBook sales account for 25% of the data. iPhone here, right? If you want to Uh, all right, and then same thing here for a city: San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York. Purchase by month, percent. You know, how much do we make by month? How much do we make various hours? Why is this useful? Because we don't know what's going to be interesting about the data. Like we don't know which of these features to look at. So the goal is look at all of them as quickly as possible, and see how they break down, and then let the data tell you where to go next. Before like programming, right? The way like consultants would do this is they would make hypotheses as to how our data must break down. And that's not a bad technique, but we want to use the benefit of like programming and like being able to be interactive and letting the data tell us where the interesting breakdowns are. Okay? How does this feel? Take that as good. So this is going to be our technique. And, what we'll do next, so what the next reading does, so this is the building a library, this is what we just went through. The next lesson is basically showing how do you walk through a data set. Right? Like this is basically the beginning of, and this would get you a pretty good answer in a challenge, in a coding challenge. All right? Where you load the data, coerce it, check the representativeness of it, and then begin to plot it. Okay? Are you all able to function? No? Really? Okay. Try. I think this is very try. Maybe it's just my lecturing, but go through these lessons. Hopefully you absorb something. If not, we have to go through it again, because I like this. We just get lots of questions on this. All right, so there's no way. If like I said, we use data analysis. If like 30% of the questions on are involve data analysis, you just have to learn it. All right, there's no other way. And unfortunately, it's timed. So that means like we've literally gotten things like, okay, like here's a data set, explore it in like an hour, ask us questions, and give us a presentation. And then in the second part of the interview. Right, so that means like having done this before and having a library to lean on and a real approach, as opposed to I guess I'll do a group on just stumbling around. That's not going to work. So okay, let me